Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 36 of Breaking Step. What happened? Don's voice, concerned. Where did that wall come from? Tibs was in Jekyll's arm, eyes closed, exhausted, but unable to fall unconscious. I must have stepped on a trigger, Jekyll said. You know me, the klutz. Tibs wanted to tell Jekyll to stop talking. He was trying too hard, but he didn't have the energy. Jekyll always tried too hard when he lied. Unless he was serious about it, Tibs realized. Then he was terrifyingly good at it. So good that in the heat of the fight, Tibs hadn't paid attention to the light on his words. He just wanted to. It should be funny. It should be scary, but Tibs couldn't seem to feel all that much right now. How did you bring it down? Don again, still concerned. Jekyll shrugged. I got lucky. No such thing. It was interesting to Tibs how often people relegated their planning to something that didn't exist. It should, something. Only he didn't feel all that much right now. This was different from when he'd been iced. He wasn't channeling any elements, so it was it was good he couldn't open his eyes. His emotions were there, raw, scratching at all of him, but he was drained of physical energy and of essence. He'd been so lost in his rage, he hadn't realized Jekyll had gotten him to use up all his nearly endless reserve. It should have been enough to kill Jekyll. He had tried to kill Jekyll. If he had only a little energy, he'd use it to throw himself into the abyss for that. He wanted to cry, to bawl his eyes out. It was probably funny. He'd spent months iced because he didn't want to feel anything. Now that he could, he didn't have the energy to manage it. How are none of you worried about what just happened? Dawn again, annoyed and suspicious this time. It's the dungeon, was his voice. It's not like it's the first time it changed things. Sometime it is best to simply appreciate that events work out in our favor. Come, Dar. Stop doing that. Just keep it there. But if the dungeon changed this, Dawn, exasperated, worried, it might. Dawn, drop it. Jackal, snapping. Dawn's grumbled reply was indistinct, but Tibs knew it for the sign the dropping was temporary, that it was. For the sign that the dropping was temporary, that it was. Wait, no. Tibs knew it for the sign that the dropping was temporary, that it was. Yeah, that works. They walked. Tibs didn't know how long. It could have been seconds, hours. It couldn't be days. Then a cool breeze brushed his face, light through his eyelids. Jackal moving suddenly, jerking Tibs to as much awareness as he could manage at the moment. He's fine, he snapped. Then why are you carrying him? An older sounding woman, stern. Essence moved about him, purity. He should keep it from sensing him, from learning his secrets, but he didn't have the strength. No, purity couldn't learn his secret. Thinking was so difficult. Essence exhaustion. Kamdar, in response to a question Tibbs missed. He should pay more attention. There might have been an important detail there. They moved again. The sun heated him, comforted him. Tibbs wanted neither. He didn't deserve warmth or comfort. The door opened and closed, rousing Tibbs. He turned on his side, putting his back to the intruder. He wasn't on his bed. He didn't want a private room in the inn where he could Where he should be was in a cell, if not dropped into the abyss and forgotten there. I'm not hungry. He replied to the smell of the broth. He curled in on himself tighter to silence his stomach. Going hungry was the least of the punishment he deserved. He couldn't get rid of Jackal's image, pierced by the stone spire. Spire? It doesn't feel right. What term did I use here? Yeah, okay, I did. That is the term I used. Pierced by the stone pyres, or the satisfaction of his success, of the the satisfaction of his success in succeeding. In succeeding to finally, tears fell. He nearly killed the last member of his family, and he had rejoiced at his accomplishment. That hurt more than being soaked through with corruption before he had the element. What also hurt was the realization that he didn't think of the rest of his team as his family. He'd always imagined they were part of it just for being on his team. Well, he didn't think of Dawn as family, so there was that. But Kamdar and Mez had been with him for long enough. They should be his family too. It hurt to realize that somehow Tibs had kept them from becoming so. He wanted the pain to go away. He wanted to fill himself with ice, take the easy route to peace. But ice was how he'd reached a point where killing Jackal was not only acceptable but desirable. It was painful to realize he couldn't trust the elements. He was supposed to have mastered them. He deserved the pain. The intruder pulled the chair closer to the bed. Close to the bed, it creaked as he sat in. Go away, Tibs wailed. He didn't obey. Why couldn't he let him wallow in his misery? Tibs had almost killed his man. He should hate him, not sit there after bringing a bowl of broth. Tibs had no idea how it was Jackal wasn't dead. As far as Tibs knew, he was the only one who couldn't be hurt by the elements he had. Something about his actual element. Was it something about Jackal suffusing himself with earth? Had that granted him the immunity? Rosef should be accusing him, not sit there. Not should accuse him. Not sit there waiting to ask how he was doing. Try to get him to eat something. Try to convince him he shouldn't be alone, that the others wanted him among them. Go away, he mumbled into the pillow. Khrushchev didn't say anything. He also didn't leave. Why wasn't he abandoning him? Tibs honestly. Didn't Khrushchev understand what he did? That he did. Didn't Khrushchev understand that he didn't deserve the company? He turned and glared at the server. Get the fuck out! Khrushchev smiled and shook his head. Tibs sat. Do you have any fucking idea what I can do to you? He snarled. Go ahead. Tibs extended his senses and narrowed his eyes. He expected Jackal by the door, ready to burst in and rescue his men should... There was no one by the door. Sensing further, the fighter was downstairs, at their table with the rest of the team. How could they leave Khrushchev in such danger? Hadn't Tibs demonstrated just how dangerous he could be? At least they should have Kamdar. Oh, come on. Really? Learn the bleeping word. At least they should have Kamdar there, ready to weaken him if he tried anything. As drained as Tibs was, he wouldn't be able to resist him. Why weren't any of them there to make sure Tibs didn't endanger anyone else? He made a fist and coated it, and fire coated it. Its heat just this side of painful, and he had to fight the reflex to push it away from his skin. Fire was the one element that hurt him, and he wasn't going to make that punishment less. I'm serious, Tibs said, shaking his fist threateningly. Did Khrushchev know this was all his small reserve let him do? He didn't have his bracers. Jekyll had taken them off when he'd undressed Tibbs before tucking him into bed. He had no idea where they were, destroyed, if Jekyll was as smart as he hid. Do it. I'm not iced, Khrushchev, he snarled. Do you have any fucking idea how angry I am right now? Jekyll's man shook his head. Then, do it, Khrushchev said with a shrug. The fire faltered along with his anger. How aren't you scared of me? I nearly killed Jekyll. I could keep you. I could kill you. Kill you by barely thinking about it. Because I know you, Tibbs. Tibbs snorted and fell back on the bed, then turned his back to Khrushchev again. The silence stretched. Why don't you hate me? He asked when it became too heavy. Because I know you, Tibbs. No, you don't. He wasn't sure he knew himself anymore. If he'd contemplated killing Jekyll, his best friend, the closest thing to a brother, the last of his family, what else might he do? You didn't kill him. Tibbs jerked to sitting again. I tried to. How is that not enough? That wasn't you. It was, he snapped. I was there. I wanted him dead. I was so pissed at him for getting in my way that I was going to do anything to remove him. He deflated. I thought I had. He pulled his knee to his chest. I was happy I had. He rested his head on his knees and cried again. It hurt so much. It wasn't you who tried to kill him, Tibbs. It was the elements. That's not how it works, Dix mumbled. The elements don't influence us like that. Joseph snorted, and when Tibbs glared at him, he hid his smile. What's funny? Tibbs demanded. Just remembering watching you as you learn to channel this element or that one. It's funny that you're now saying they don't influence you. I got that under control. Filling yourself with water like you did, keeping it iced for so long, that influenced you. Don read treatises on the effect of suffusing yourself with your element. Tibbs shrugged. What did he care for what Don had read? He'd been the one doing it. He was the one who had decided, then planned on killing Jekyll. That he'd failed had more to do with how good Jekyll was with his element than anything Tibbs had failed to do. Didn't they understand Tibbs had almost succeeded? He tried to swallow the pain. You rest, Joseph said, patting his shoulder. You should have some broth before it gets cold. Then he left Tibbs alone, finally. Tibbs curled up and cried while he waited for the abyss to swallow him. Why? Tibbs asked, face buried in the pillow. Why was he back again? How many days now had the server ignored Tibbs's desire to be alone, to suffer his hunger, wallow in pain, be punished? He'd lost track. With falling asleep, crying, waking up to images of Jekyll crumbling to pieces in his arm, to Tibbs' glorious cackle as he burned down Stowe, and then feeling just as exhausted as when he'd fallen asleep. Because I don't want you to be alone right now. It's what I deserve. No one deserves to be alone. Then where's Jekyll? Tibbs demanded, glaring at his man. Why isn't he here? Why should he be here? Tibbs had tried to kill him. Because he's scared. That made sense. Jekyll couldn't know if Tibbs would try to kill him again. He doesn't know how to comfort you, and he's terrified of screwing that up. And you aren't? Tibbs meant to throw the derision in there. Had he? Joseph smiled. Unlike my man, I have experience dealing with grief and pain in ways other than punching those responsible or, well, you prefer not hearing about what we do. Tibbs rolled his eyes and turned his back to Jekyll's man. This isn't working, he said, and hoped Khrushchev believed him, and he asked the abyss that he didn't. Tibbs tried not to sense Khrushchev approaching, but his stomach's growl kept him sensing. With the server came food, and Tibbs was hungry. He was famished. It already took all his will not to suffuse himself with purity, then take it away. Since no one was punishing him, Tibbs would see to it himself. No matter how hungry he got, he wouldn't eat. His punishment shouldn't end. The door opened and closed. The smell of something fishy and spicy reached him, and he salivated. Water filled his mouth, and he drank it before he could stop himself. Water kept doing that, forming any time he felt parched, and he never stopped himself in time. The bowl was on the bedside table, the chair pulled close to the bed. And Khrushchev sat and said nothing. The silence was worse. Tibbs wanted accusation, demands of explanation. He'd even take accusatory glares, but all he got from Jackal's man was understanding and patient looks. He ground his teeth. It was like Khrushchev was purposely aggravating him by doing the opposite of what anyone in his position would do. Tibbs had tried to kill his man. What do you want? He demanded, glaring. Just fucking tell me what I have to do for you to fucking go away. Khrushchev smiled and none of the condescension it should. Eh, I'm not going away, but I'd like it if you talked to me. I already told you I tried to kill him. What else do you want me to say? How do you feel? Tibbs stared at him. What kind of stupid question was that? I feel like burning you and this entire place down, he snarled. How's that for how I feel? Why don't you? Oh, is he serious? Because I don't have any essence, he snapped. He didn't need light on the words, but he knew he was lying. He had enough to start a small fire, then he could draw on that to make it ever larger. And that was if he didn't channel fire. His large reserve felt nearly empty, but that still meant there was a lot of essence there for him to use. So it was a good thing Khrushchev couldn't know. Jekyll's man reached down and came up with Tibbs's bracers and offered them to him. Had they been there the entire time? They couldn't have. Tibbs was have sensed. No, the enchantment on them meant only when he touched them did he sense the weave. He was so used to wearing them he'd forgotten. Was his armor also there? Are you seriously offering them to me? With the essence in there? I can burn the neighborhood. I'm not worried. How? Tibbs asked, his voice coming out nearly in a whine. With how tired of Khrushchev's nonchalance he was. He had nearly killed Jackal. That showed how strong he was. He destroyed everything around the transportation platform. How was he not scared of what Tibbs could do? I know you, Tibbs. He rolled his eyes. If you did, you wouldn't come back like that every day. You'd kick me out of the inn, threaten me to if I ever showed up again. Threaten you with what? Tibbs glared at the man for the amusement in his voice. He sighed when the expression didn't change. Fine. What do you know about me that makes you feel so safe offering me those? He asked with derision. You care. That's the stupidest thing you've ever said, Tibbs replied. And I mean beyond Jekyll kind of stupid. Ouch, Khrushchev smirked. My man's going to be hurt. You think I'm better at him at that? This isn't funny. The smile told Tibbs what he thought of that statement. Tibbs let himself fall back on the bed and crossed his arms. It isn't, he grumbled. Tibbs, everything you've done since I've met you has been out of a desire to help those around you, Tibbs snorted. You care, Tibbs. I burned down an entire neighborhood, he offered as contradiction. You mean Marketplace? You did that to keep Jackal's father from escaping. Well, channeling element you had no control over at the time. By the time you did that, it wasn't you anymore, Tibbs. It was the element. And don't tell me that's not how it works, he said as Tibbs opened his mouth. You know quite well that until you figured out how to remain yourself while channeling those elements, it did. I tried to kill Jackal long after I mastered water, he countered. But while iced for so long, you weren't yourself anymore. You, Tibbs, can cause great damage, but you do so while looking to save someone or protect them. He offered the bracer again. So take them. I'm not worried. Tibbs eyed them warily. I am, he whispered, his voice trembling. You don't understand how angry I am. I want to burn the guild down for how they let Sebastian run. Where? What? I want to burn the guild down for how they let Sebastian run in my town. Look. What? Run. It has to be free. That's the only word that makes sense here. Run free in my town. How'd they let him kill Karina? He closed his eyes, tears falling. I don't know if I'll be able to stop myself once I have essence again. I don't know if I'll care who else gets hurt in the process. Tibbs, you already have essence. It's not the same. He snapped. It's not fire right now, and I don't have enough in my other reserves to do anything fast. With that, I can just unleash everything and not care what happens. If that was something you really had to be afraid of, Jekyll wouldn't have survived this fight with you. He didn't win because I didn't want to kill him. He won because he was so much fucking smarter than I am. Now, let's never tell him you said that, okay? There's anger itched on the humor of Krosev's reaction, and before he could reignite it, he continued. You broke down on realizing what you did, Tibbs. If there was any danger you'd let others be hurt while making the guild pay, you'd have made sure Jackal was dead, instead of being devastated by the realization of what you did. What if I can't resist icing up again? He felt sick thinking about it, but he knew that would go away under the ice's influence. Jekyll's not going to be able to pull that trick on me again. When Krosev didn't answer, Tibbs looked up. He was studying him. You don't trust me either. Somehow that made him feel better. Do you know what kind of a drunk is the most dangerous? The angry one. Krosev shook his head. It's the one who thinks they don't have a problem. Who thinks getting drunk is just something they do when they feel like it. They're the one who'll drink when it can affect their livelihood. If it's a guard, people might die, and like how you were, until they're broken by it, they never see the problem they've become. And once they're broken, they know better than to go back. Tibbs was surprised at the hope in his question. Krosev shook his head. A lot of them go right back to drinking, so they don't have to deal with the damage they caused. But the certainty never comes back. They always know what they're doing isn't fixing the problem. Some will eventually have enough of that and fight their way out. Having friends and family makes that fight easier to win. So I might go back. Tibbs slumped. What was the point of trying if he might fail? You might. Tibbs looked up at the amusement in the tone. But if you do, I know Father will be right there, ready to punch you back to your senses. And that concludes chapter 36 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the whole story, it is up on Royal Road for free. If you want to read ahead of what is on Royal Road, my Patreon has 20 chapters on top of that. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.